I got chills. I invite everyone to share their reactions in the chat. And I would like to introduce our panelists for this afternoon. First, we have Paula Eiselt. Paula directs and produces feature films about unforgettable characters thriving in unbelievable circumstances. Her previous feature, 93 Queen, now streaming on HBO Max, was released theatrically across the United States and broadcast worldwide, starting with PBS's POV. IndieWire has named Paula one of 22 rising filmmakers to watch in 2022, and in 2019, Paula was named one of Jewish Week's 36 under 36. Next, we have Tonya Lewis-Lee. Tonya is a director, producer, writer whose work often explores the personal impact of social justice issues. As a television producer, Tonya served as executive producer on the episodic series She's Gotta Have It, which is currently streaming on Netflix. As a film producer, Lee produced Monster, which premiered at the 2018 Sundance Film Festival and is now available on Netflix. And IndieWire has also named Tonya as one of 22 rising female filmmakers to watch in 2022. And last but certainly not least, we have Shawnee Benton-Gibson. Shawnee is the CEO of Spirit of a Woman Leadership Development Institute, an organization established in 2002 and designed to educate, elevate, and affect positive and sustainable transformation in the lives of individuals, groups, families, and communities. Shawnee is a master teacher, trainer, healer, vision coach, performance artist, inspirational speaker, officiant, mother, and friend. Her principal teaching and healing tools consisting of spiritual counseling, coaching, sacred rituals, psychodrama, energy work, the performing arts, and storytelling as mediums to ignite transformation and initiate catharsis. I invite you to welcome our panelists in the chat. Feel free to give an emoji round of applause. We are so thankful that we are holding space and sharing space with them today. And that leads me to my first question for the panel, which is, what led you to focus on Black maternal mortality in this film?
Hi, good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to be here with Paula and Shawnee to talk about our film. I'll start and I can let Paula pick up. For me, I was involved in a campaign raising awareness about the infant mortality crisis in the United States back in 2007, and had the opportunity to travel this country and speak with lots of women about women's health, because of course, as you all know very well, when you talk about an infant's health, you're really talking about a woman's health. And inevitably in those settings, someone would tell me a story about a woman who had passed away from childbirth complications. And was really trying to figure out what was going on, why this was happening so much, especially to Black women. There is, as we all know, probably on this call, that the disparity that Black women die at 3 to 4 times the rate of white women in this country. Black babies die at 3 to 4 times the rate of white babies in this country when it comes to infant mortality. And just really wanted to shine a light on the story, figure out what's really going on, and tell the story. I think I want to save lives. That's why I'm telling this story. It's most of these deaths are preventable. 60% of the deaths are preventable. There are things that we can do, and so just wanted to showcase that.
Yeah, and for me, the way I got into telling this story, first and foremost, as a mother, I have 4 children, and I had my own traumatic experiences within the system in various ways. But it wasn't until the end of 2017 when a slew of articles started coming out, journalistic articles, really exposing that the US was actually in crisis, that we were in the midst of a US maternal health crisis, and more women die here than in any industrialized nation in the world. And that really, I stopped in my tracks when I started reading that, and then realized that what I went through, my lived experience, really profoundly affects Black women at much greater rates with higher stakes. And I felt I just needed to use whatever skill set I had to help uplift those stories, and center Black women in doing that, because that's the only way that we can solve this crisis, is first and foremost by centering Black women in terms of care, but also in leadership. Black women have been doing this for decades, centuries, since the beginning of the founding of this country. So really, this was the only way to tell this story. And here we are 2.5 years later, after Tonya and I embarked on this journey, and met Shawnee, who, you know, I just want to say she is our guiding light. There's a story of the US maternal health crisis. It's a huge national issue, huge in scope, but it wasn't until we met Shawnee that we understood how to tell this story. And really, we're telling it through the lived experiences of Shawnee, Omari, and Bruce, to honor Shawnee Gibson and Amber Rose Eiselt. So that's how we got here.
Thank you, Paula. Just thinking about what you shared about your own personal experience. This story, unbeknownst to me, started when I was in my 20s, when I gave birth to my first and second child. It started with me experiencing postpartum depression, experiencing like hallucinations after I had Shawnee. It only lasted for a couple of weeks, but it was very scary. And then giving birth to my second child, experiencing preterm labor, birth trauma, because the cruelty that I experienced when I was giving birth to my daughter, Jasmine, it stayed in my body and it festered in my body, manifesting fibroids and just other things, because the story was just never told, because I didn't even know there was a story to tell. And Jasmine being born 2 months early, while I was 7 months pregnant, having a birth defect, needing surgery, being in the hospital for a month, and then me going into severe postpartum depression and psychoses, thinking about harming myself, harming the baby, having like this real focus on Jasmine and these delusional thoughts. And then years passing, me as a 35-year-old giving birth to my son and experienced postpartum depression. And all 3 times it looked very different. And just being committed to telling trauma stories about birth, especially Black and Brown folks and our experiences, and doing that with my daughter Jasmine as a part of our healing, because it impacted our bonding. So Shawnee's death is a continuation of a series of traumas that I've experienced and other women that look like me. I wish I can say that I was unique, but I am not. In all the years that I have been gathering stories and holding space for healing and support groups and psychotherapy and just different things that I've done, psychodrama, I've heard these stories again and again and again. And I'm just committed to making sure that the stories continue to be told, and that these voices are amplified so that we can stop this scourge, this epidemic of Black maternal morbidity and mortality.
Absolutely. Thank you all for that. I want to echo the thanks that's coming in at the chat. Thank you for sharing this story. Shawnee, thank you for sharing your story. There's a lot of gratitude. I would like to know, what did you learn in this work beyond the devastating statistics that are often reiterated, again and again?
I guess I'll start. I mean, what did we learn? So much. I mean, I think we, and I'll let Tonya and Shawnee speak for themselves, but I know that the 3 of us, definitely Shawnee and Tonya and I, went in knowing that the system was designed the way it is to not work. So that seeing that firsthand wasn't surprising. But I think it's the solutions that are there that are tangible, and how quickly we can change this if we invest in those solutions. I was surprised to know that we're the only country, industrialized country, that does not have integrated midwifery care, and just seeing how other countries really have full integration between doctors and midwives. That's something that I didn't understand the scope of how much we were lacking, and how the industry, because it's state to state and there's no federal action on this, that midwives can operate in different states, and every state has their own regulations, and that makes the movement very disjointed, and that serves the system to not have that unifying force of midwives. I'll let Tonya and Shawnee speak, but the one thing little factoid that I learned is about the term delivery, like labor and delivery. Really, the word deliver comes from deliver us from evil. And I had never known that before, and that just it said so much of just the language around birthing, the culture around birthing, that we say, you know, women deliver. Like, what does that even mean? We don't deliver, we birth. And just understanding how seemingly little things like that actually speak a lot about a culture, and I hope that could shift.
And for me, I'll just pick up with the midwifery piece, just the how I guess I had known, but maybe I wasn't so clear on how vilified midwives were, how midwives were really eradicated on purpose to get us all to give birth in hospitals by doctors. What I didn't know, which is not in the film though, is that the 4 years of residency that doctors go through is actually based on the 4 years of apprenticeship that midwives go through. There's a lot that's taken from midwives to pass on. So just in terms of that kind of thing, I've learned. I don't know that I learned it, but I feel I had the opportunity to really witness up close and personal the resilience of humanity, how the power of love transcends and can really make a change in our society, that we are really powered by love, and love can change things and will change systems. So that's what I've taken away. Oh, and I just want to add that Shawnee is indeed fire. I saw someone put that in the chat, and we are all grateful to Shawnee. I gotta say that.
Thank you, Tonya. I'm trying to keep the inferno down, because it's a lot over here, a lot happening over here. So what I learned is just how ignorant some of the professed, people profess that the smartest people on the planet are the doctors and the scientists. And I just learned how untrue that is, and how we need to go back to the folks that are, what the Bible says, are the least of these, the grandmamas, not the midwives, because to me, they're the most brilliant, and they've been that. It's not go back. They've already been here. They've been showing us the way. We haven't been paying attention in this country. There were just a lot of things that were confirmed for me. And I knew this already. I just didn't know, the world didn't know, that Black men stand up for one another, that they show up for one another, that they feel, that they're willing to heal and deal with what is happening to them, and that there's a false narrative around them being disconnected and disinterested in being fathers and holding space for their partners. So I love that one of the highlights of the film is that level of Black love amongst men.
Beautiful. I love that so much. And I learned something in this last couple of minutes as you were sharing what you learned. But I will say, Shawnee, what you shared is a great segue to the next question, because I feel doing this work in maternal mortality and morbidity that we are often just continually told like the doom and the gloom, and Black maternal mortality is indeed horrible. We need to make changes now. But I would love if you could tell me more about the tone of the film and the general feeling that people will get by watching.
Really appreciate that question. When Paula and I were working on the film, it was really, really important to us that the film not have doom and gloom feeling. The last thing we want is for people to come away from the film afraid to give birth. I keep saying Black people are a small part of the population in general. We want all these Black and brown babies to come. We want people to have babies. We want to keep ourselves going. And so it was really critical that we balance sort of the tragedy with the hope. And it wasn't hard, because we had people like Shawnee, Omari, and Bruce who are very inspirational to me personally, just with their ability to turn, as Omari says in the film, their pain into power. And so as you are going on this journey in the film with these people who have dealt with the worst tragedy that any of us would want to deal with, they are inspired, they are fighting to change things. And that's why I say the thing about love, because it's about the love they have for their family members and the love they have for their community, that they don't want anyone else to go through this. And I leave the film feeling very hopeful. I am optimistic because I do think that we can make a difference. And so I leave the film feeling very optimistic, feeling like, what else can I do to keep it going?
Yeah, and to add to that, as Tonya said, Shawnee, Bruce, and Omari are in the film, and as you see in their daily practice, are constantly working and moving forward. And their journeys actually led the trajectory of the film. And so it was always activism based and empowerment based. I also want to add that we do, it was important to us to also uplift a birthing story that happened in a birthing center. Felicia and her family had showed us what kind of options birthing people can have when they're presented with options and autonomy around birth. Felicia, when we initially met her, she was going to birth in a hospital, and it was a great hospital. And she had a great doctor seemingly, and she decided, a birth center is more what she wants to do, and was able to have this beautiful birth surrounded by her husband, her doula, in a place that was safe and full of love. And there's so much momentum right now in the public eye, and as we know, has been in the community for decades, but right now feels like a moment where we hope the film can be used as a tool by activists to shed light on this moment and give birthing people more birthing options.
Yeah. I want to say something about this, because in the years that I've been doing the work, one of the things that keeps coming up is about the focus on trauma without action. And I actually, as a clinician, as a healer, I want to say that action is the telling of the traumatic story. And I don't want to get that twisted, that there has been decades, centuries without these stories being told. And this is a small slither and moment in time where a lot of these stories are being amplified. So I encourage people to slow it down a bit. It's like, we haven't even heard the half, we haven't heard a fraction of the experiences. And most people who look like me, BIPOC folks, don't even know they were traumatized because what is done to us is so normalized. So part of the action is to listen and to receive the stories. Part of the action is to tell the story, to go back and fetch the story. Someone in the chat said Sankofa, go back and fetch it. But you have to know and be told and have a model that it's normal and acceptable for you to share what has happened to you. And it's also, we need to be retrained and developed so we can recognize as BIPOC folks that this is, someone mentioned in the chat also, birth injury, that how I'm spoken to about how I got pregnant and whether I'm with my partner or not, where I live, my accent, because I'm clearly from New York, right? Just all of that we get these tiny little microaggressions that end up having us hemorrhaging as a people. So I'm just encouraging everybody, the 198 people in this space, to stop saying we need to stop talking about the trauma. I can never talk enough about the trauma, and I can simultaneously take action while I express what has happened to me. You don't have enough time in the day to hear my story and the many stories of Black and Brown women and birthing people who have had these experiences. So please stop.
Thank you. Snaps, applause, all of it. I think that is very actionable advice that I think we all can take, especially the practitioners in this space of, we need to listen. I think a lot of us spend a lot of time talking, making assumptions about like what we should do, but we need to stop, slow down, and listen to the stories, what has happened to people. Thank you so much for sharing that. In that same vein, Shawnee, you shared as well as you taught Tonya about love and about how we need to lift up Black men and Black fathers. So could you share a little bit more about why it's important to talk about these fathers left behind, why it's important to talk to Black men who have been impacted by maternal mortality and maternal morbidity?
Sure, I can start. I think, well, it does take two to make a baby. And the partners are indeed the ones that are left behind when someone passes away from childbirth complications. I think, it was for us in terms of the film, it felt like a natural way to go, because these are the people who were closest to these women. These are the people who are now raising those children. And I think, often in the conversation around maternal mortality, rightfully so, we're focusing on the woman, but this is a family situation. It's not just happening to the woman, it's happening to her partner, it's happening to her children, it's happening to her parents, it's happening to her community. And so when we tell the story and for us, honestly, with this film, these particular men, I always say this because I've been raised and been around lots of beautiful, wonderful Black men. So I do not think that they are exceptional. They are wonderful men, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're an exception to the rule. I just don't think it's something that we see very often. So it feels new, right? But I think it's important that we understand that not only do they take care of their families, they take care of their communities. These are men who are out there advocating so that other people in their community don't go through the trauma that they have been through. And they are very serious about it. They're very active about it. And I think we need to see more images of Black men this way. I mean, it's crazy to me that that's not considered the norm for most people.
Yeah, I'll share. This is a word that just came through for me. It's concentricity. You cannot tell the story of Shamani without telling the story of Omari, without telling the story of me, and then her children and her sister and the extended communities. They're all these overlapping concentric stories and circles that are interconnected and cannot be pulled apart. So we would have been remiss if Bruce and Omari's stories were not centered, and I believe the brother, Felicia's husband's name is Paul, if those stories weren't told, then there would be an incompleteness. And we keep forgetting this. I speak a lot about white supremacy culture, and it teaches you to be individualized and to think about yourself in this box. And because we've been operating this way is how we got here in the first place. So Omari's voice is very important. Men need to hear that you belong at the birthing center, you belong at the side of your partner, that you belong in the conversation. It's insane. Like, we wouldn't have the babies if it were not for levels of intimacy, connection, or even if you went to a sperm bank, we still need men. We need to have them in the conversation. And because of the overlapping oppressive nature of patriarchy, we need to retrain men. So as we invite them in and teach them how to be with us as women, as birthing people, then we transform the state of affairs, not only for Black maternal health, but the state of affairs in this world.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. In that same way, and I loved how you said about completely shifting, Shawnee, about completely shifting how men engage and how they're seen as partners, right? And I think that the same way that we need partners, our partners involved, we also need our broader community. We need our moms, our aunties, those family friends that shower and surround us with support and help us through. And so could you share more about what you all learned, what you experienced about Black maternal mortality's impact on a greater community? If you would like to share more also on what you would like the public to learn about maternal mortality and its impact on communities as a whole.
I guess I'll start that the namesake of the film, which is after Shawnee and Omari's celebration of Shamani's life, which is Aftershock. The Aftershock event was one of the very first things that we filmed. Aftershock, when a mother dies, and Shawnee can speak to this, it's a ripple effect that ripples through an entire family, community, people, and country. The loss of one mother is the loss of a world. So it reverberates, and it's not an isolated incident. And, you can tell a country's progress or lack of progress by how it treats its mothers and children. So it is felt deeply through communities. It's another Black maternal mortality is another way of breaking up families. It's the same mechanism that really can lead to a slow genocide of just constantly taking mothers out of families and families out of communities. So it's a dire situation. I think, what personally I want people to know, and it's been said so beautifully by Shawnee and Tonya, is, that there's hope here. It's not doom and gloom. And yes, there's so many different causes, so to say, and different solutions, but it really comes to first dismantling the racist systems in which everything was designed on. That's the first step, and everything else will come from that. And yes, we need midwives, and we need doulas, and we need a bigger perinatal workforce. We need all those things, but unless the woman, especially a Black woman, is centered in every one of those settings, it all kind of doesn't matter. You can have a midwife who doesn't center a woman. You can have a doctor who does center the woman. So it's really about seeing that woman as a full human being and centering their wishes and autonomy. And I think any providers on this Zoom really need to hear that and listen to the people that they're serving.
And I just want to say, I'm just so grateful to Shawnee for, first of all, just being who she is, and being able to, after Shamani passed away, really put out a call to action to the community, which is how we got to Shawnee for the Aftershock event that they did in honor of Shamani's life, which brought us to the film. And that event brought the community out. And I know Shamani was just, Shawnee should speak to this more than I, but it's clear that Shawnee was very much a part of her community, and the community felt this loss, which was so clear to us. And I think as filmmakers, that really helps to ground how we're telling the story. So I just thank you. I just want to say that to you, Shawnee, in this group for allowing us in and putting that call out.
Thank you. Just for having the presence of mind to reach out, not knowing me or our family, but recognizing that telling the story was more important than being comfortable, So I acknowledge Paula for reaching out. Wounds create worlds. And so when I think, and Paula spoke about it earlier, when, I speak about downloads, how things get dropped into me, and that's because I'm open not only to the living community, but also the ancestral community that we're connected to. And I don't want to leave that out of the equation. Our family is very spiritual. We understand that we didn't get to where we are without the experiences of the folks that came before us, those folks who have passed on. And so with that community plus the living community, we just felt the full impact of it. And we felt the need to make sure that we educated the community about what transpired, not just the communities and networks that Shawnee and my family are a part of, but the extended communities. So, you know, I speak a lot about the fact that at her service, because the Aftershock celebration was 2 months after she died, but her service, you know, was well attended. We broadcasted it live. One of our other partners in the film, Bruce, speaks about Mamie Till and her son Emmett Till and how she had an open casket, even though his body, the devastation that was inflicted upon him was, and it was a summer day, so they could smell him, they could see him. And I never thought about it until Bruce brought it up. But I'm like, I wanted my daughter to be seen by the public. And I also wanted the public to know how she died and to name it in that space. And for every pregnant woman in the space or birthing person, any woman that or had just had a baby, any family member who was connected to someone, I wanted to make sure that we talked about maternal morbidity and mortality at the funeral services. So people were saying I was in shock. And I say, no, I was in action. I had a present audience of mostly BIPOC folks, and I needed to do my job. And if I didn't do that, my daughter, the ancestor, would come back and tap me. And so I took responsibility and I grieved and I led at the same time. There was no shock about that. That was very strategic and intentional, and it still continues to be. I can cry and still teach you about maternal morbidity and mortality and what you can do to transform that. And we can't do it without community. And that includes folks who identify as white. We are not going to shift this without white folks being part of the solution and the transformation of these outcomes.
Absolutely. You were in action. I love that framing and the idea of bringing everyone in so that they know, so that we can collectively work together to address this issue. In this last question, before we move to audience Q&A, I actually want to lean in a little bit more to that call to action, that prompt to action. And I want to know, you know, what can we do to move this work forward, right? We need to work together. You know, everyone on this call are in various places and levels of impact, of birth work, of doing something about this issue, various races, genders, creeds, all of that is on this call. So what can we do? How can we also move in action to do something about this crisis?
Well, I can start. I would say first, thank you for being here. That's one thing you've done. So thank you for coming and listening and being a part of the conversation. I would say keep an open mind and be on the ready for when it's your time to step up and do something. I don't know necessarily what all of the skill sets are or where everybody is, but I know everybody has a role to play, and you need to be paying attention to what's going out there. You need to be in the conversation. You came here, so you're already in the conversation, and just, you know, be on deck and ready to step up when it's your time to really hit it out the park. And I will say, keep the conversation going. Don't stop talking about these issues. We have to keep talking. I love what Shawnee said. We need all the allies that we have. And by the way, this is not just an issue for Black women. It is a bigger issue for Black women in this country, but white women are not doing as well as their counterparts in other countries. So I am always the one to say, if you don't care about Black people, you should pay attention to what's happening to us, because it is coming for you. So think about how you can fix it before it gets worse for all of us. So just do your part and be ready.
I'll just add that yes, talking about it is really key, because you never know the one thing you're going to say that's going to stick with someone, and that's going to then when they're going, a birthing person's going to their appointment, it's going to stay in their head. They're going to do something differently. A provider might stay in their head. So just talking, spreading the word. I want to just specifically shout out Shawnee's foundation, the ARIA Foundation, which is doing incredible work. Shawnee Omari founded that foundation, and she can tell you more about it. But if a quick way to get to it, as well as Bruce's foundation, the Save a Rose Foundation, is to go to aftershockdocumentary.com, and you can find links to these foundations. And please, if you're able to, give what you can and just support their work, because what Tonya and I really want is for the film to be used by Shawnee, Omari, Bruce, and all of you who are deep in this work on a daily basis. We're artists. We don't work in this field on a daily basis. You all do. So please use this film as you see fit to help with your work.
Sherry, thank you, Paula. There's the African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so it's going to take a united front, us sharing resources, currency, our intellectual currency, our spiritual currency, our literal financial currency, just all of that to shift the state of affairs for reproductive health in this country, and specifically for Black and Brown folks. The ARIA Foundation, as Paula mentioned, stands for the advancement of reproductive innovation through artistry and healing. Our entire family, we're artists in different ways, and we come together a lot to generate art. We call it edutainment. I do healing art, and so does the extended family. My daughter, my living daughter, Jasmine, is a videographer, photographer. Her work is in the Aftershock film. So that's an important mechanism. And just us telling our birthing stories, like you only hear the cute, fluffy stories, right? And there are some stories that will shock you to the core. And I work with a lot of women who've experienced stillbirth, some of which who are on this line right now. And, just there's a stigma around saying that I was pregnant and then I gave birth and my baby was not born breathing, wasn't born alive. And it's hard to say, but we want to normalize these conversations, right? And normalize us talking about doctors that don't treat us well, being able to say no. When you go to these appointments, it's like, no, don't touch me there. Ask for permission. Us being able to give consent. Yeah, I came to the doctor, but you can't just handle me. And if they say we can't have certain tests, being able to say, well, put that in writing since you said I shouldn't have this test, or this thing is not happening with my body, so that there's proof that they told you no, because we find out much later on that there was an issue that happened with my daughter. It's like, oh, you're all right, just rest. And that's the worst thing she could have ever done. The ARIA Foundation, in our commitment, we definitely use art as a conduit for educating the community and healing the community. But I'm also, once again, a psychotherapist, a healer. So group work we're going to be doing support groups for fathers, just creating space for community to share stories. I do an annual conference called the Mother Wit Conference that will be happening this year in October. Aftershock, the event, happens annually. And when people have losses, they call on us to come and stand with them at rallies and to make sure that they are covered and supported so that they can manifest, whether that's money to bury the person who has passed on, or resources to help with the children, because that's hard, right? You're left with income being lost and trying to figure things out. And the last thing we want you to do is use all of your resources on a homegoing service, what I call a funeral. So there are loads of ways. Tap into your local politicians, see what their platform is around this. There's a lot of legislation that has been put out there and a lot of money that's being poured into this. So tap in and hold the folks accountable for not only putting the money out there, but how it's going to be used and that it's inclusive of the communities that are most impacted. So those are the things that come to mind right now in this moment.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a breath list. And I believe that all of us, that there's something that we can take from that to mobilize ourselves and to be put into action in this journey to end really maternal mortality and morbidity. Again, I want to say thank you to all three of you, Tonya, Paula, Shawnee. This has been a wonderful conversation. We have just a couple moments left together, and I want to ask some questions that have come in on the chat. And I saw you answer this in the chat already, Paula, but this is the #1 question that is being asked. So I just want to put it out in the air too, but when and where can people watch the film?
We don't have an exact date yet, unfortunately, but it should be July, August, September, somewhere around there, and it will be on Hulu. So be on the lookout. In the next couple of months, you should start seeing some information.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you also. The link to the website was placed in the chat, so you can also go there and be updated on the news of when it goes premieres. So a question that we have here from Paige, she asks, can you speak to birth injury and how you define it and how it provides more context to maternal mortality for Black women and babies in particular? In other words, do you feel that birth injury is not discussed in the same circles as maternal mortality, and should it be?
Oh, I will jump in and say absolutely, and thank you for the share and the question. I define birth injury as how the person who's experienced it defines it, because it's different for different people. For some, it might be how you have been spoken to during your pregnancy, or your labor and delivery process, or your postpartum. I get to define whether something feels uncomfortable, whether I feel disrespected or disregarded in the process. I'm sure there's a textbook definition for it. I pray that there is, but that's what comes up for me as I serve people. I let them declare what their injury is. And sometimes I have to tell them, like, that was disrespectful, or that was traumatic, because sometimes folks, once again, just live in life. We become accustomed to being abused. And maternal mortality is absolutely at the center of the conversations that we're having because of the film, because of what happened to my family. But the thing that is most pronounced and horrific is maternal morbidity. Just the traumas that people experience day to day. It's happening all over the country right now. Many somebodies are in a labor and delivery experience, and they're being mishandled, mistreated, not listened to, coerced into using Pitocin, coerced into having a C-section when they don't want to. So this is a big issue. And a lot of the folks who are pushing are folks that don't look like me. So I just wanted to say that, birth injury is us being looked at as commodities, and the medicalization of our experience, which is the most natural experience across the planet, but is viewed as a way to make money. There's a documentary called The Business of Being Born, came out many years ago, and it talked about that. It's like a manufacturing of babies and mamas to get paid. And so that's my definition of it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Shawnee. Go ahead, Paula.
I just wanted to piggyback off of Shawnee and say, like, survival is like the lowest possible bar. We should not be just saying, great, like, women survive childbirth. That's like the bare minimum. We need to have dignified birth, as Shawnee said, that is not traumatizing people. So, and that just, as Shawnee said, speaks to the birth culture in this country that needs a complete shift. We need to dismantle it and redo it in order to have dignified births, and of course, have moms survive. That's the bare minimum.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I appreciate the lifting up of the importance of maternal morbidity as well, because it vastly outnumbers maternal mortality every year. And yet we often don't even consider that. We just focus on, how can we prevent someone from dying? But there are so many other things that can happen during a birth that is not death. I'm going to try and squeeze one more question in, if that's okay. And Maya asked, how do you do this work without becoming overwhelmed with emotion? Or how do you use your emotion to further your efforts?
Well, as a filmmaker, I will say, it's funny, I'm a lawyer, and I at one point thought I would be a civil rights lawyer, but I quickly realized I couldn't do the work because I would cry through everything. So like I would get overly emotional and I couldn't do my job. So as a filmmaker, there are times when, I would really cry, and in looking at some of the material as it's put together. There are times when it is very difficult, and yet there's a bigger picture that I am focusing on, right? I mean, again, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, the reason why I wanted to make this film is because I want to save lives. And so, you really try to take care of yourself as best as possible in other ways. I admit I'm one to try to compartmentalize things as much as I can until I can't anymore. But you try to take care of yourself in the best way possible in doing the work.
Yeah, I don't know how humans function trying to put emotional experience on the shelf. It's impossible to do. So all you're really doing if you don't emote is stuffing it down and creating dis-ease in the body. To me, that's more exhausting than me just crying it out and expressing my anger, my sadness. And also it's hard for us to differentiate what emotions we're actually feeling. For many years, I mislabeled my sadness for anger. Anger gets a bad rap. It gets blamed for a lot of shit, and it's unfortunate. And also, as a Black woman, I've been told that I'm angry when I was really incensed, disappointed, passionate. So I don't know how to separate out who I am as an emotional being, and I don't choose to. What makes me brilliant, as I define it, is that my spiritual intelligence, my emotional intelligence, my physical intelligence, like, what I've learned in school, all of that is good, but it's not enough for me to navigate these spaces. I refuse to come in these spaces and just speak as an academic or an intellectual person. Like, you need to know what I feel as I share these facts about what happens to Black and brown women in this country. It fuels my artistic expression. It fuels who I am as a leader. It fuels how I speak. So if I wasn't emotional, you wouldn't be receiving me the way that you're receiving me now. And so I'll quickly say emotional intelligence, which is an absolute thing, self-awareness, empathy. We need that to be marching and taking action, to be in the birthing spaces if you're a birth worker. Motivation to be in this conversation is all part of emotional intelligence. Self-regulation, controlling yourself and not projecting blame or shame on people and saying, hurry up, let's move to the action. And social skills, knowing how to speak to people about their experience and hold space without making it about you. So I encourage you to amplify and build your emotional intelligence muscle, especially if you want to be in this fight.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shawnee. And in this last minute, I once again want to just say thank you to you three, not only for being here with us, but for making this art, creating this film, for sharing it, for uplifting and bringing even more visibility to this crisis that we are in. I want to invite those of you in our virtual audience also to express your thanks. This has been a really powerful conversation. I have learned so much. I am so excited for the full film later this year. But I just want to thank you for your work and for your just continued movement, for your continued action as we work together to really end maternal mortality and Black maternal mortality and Black maternal morbidity in our community. Thank you so very much. And lastly, I'll say there's a small event survey that should have popped up. We welcome your feedback. We would love to hear it and to share it so that we can learn more about how we can bring events like this to you all. So thank you all so very much. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week.